Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name is Coralie and in this video I'm going to be telling you the 24 books I want to read in 2024. So first of all, this is a very ambitious goal because my reading goal for 2024 was to read 24 books, and now I've gone and made a list of 24 books I want to read in 2024, and there's still even more books to read. Like, there's so many books, so little time. So last year I got a Kindle. Yes, currently reading Iron Flame. I get the obsession now, and it honestly turned me into a reader. I have loved every second of this Kindle and I have read so many books since I got it. And I don't want that newfound love for reading to go anywhere, so here are the 24 books I want to read in 2024. Now, seeing as I am quite new to the hype of reading and BookTok and BookTube and all that good stuff, quite a few books on here a lot of people have already read. They are quite popular, but I want to understand why. So without further ado, here are the 24 books I want to read in 2024. So first on the list I have Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas, and I know this is a humongous series and reading the entire series would take me a very long time, but I just want to start with the first one, see how I feel, see if I like it, see if I want to continue on the series, because like I said, I'm currently reading Iron Flame, which means I read Fourth Wing, and that is the very first fantasy book that I've ever read. And to be honest, until that moment I didn't think that I would like fantasy, so I just never tried reading one, and I absolutely loved it, which has opened my eyes to an entirely new realm of books. So Throne of Glass, I hear it's fantastic and I cannot wait. Next I want to read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, because I have seen people talking about this all over the place and it's supposed to be amazing, and it's supposed to kind of make you hate the main character, I've heard. So I feel like that is a very interesting way and will elicit very interesting feelings when you don't like the main character of the book. So I do really want to read Yellowface and see what all the hype is about. Next on my list is Happy Place by Emily Henry, because again, people have been raving about this book and I want to find out why, because you can't go wrong with a good little romance, and honestly I've never read that many romance books, so I'm not sure if it is a genre for me and I want to find out. So I really want to read Happy Place by Emily Henry. So next, this book came up on, I think it was my Goodreads as a suggestion, and that is The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson, and this is going to be a new release this year. I'm pretty sure it comes out in April, I want to say, and I really enjoyed Five Survive and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I haven't finished the series, I've only read the first one, but I have quite enjoyed those books, and the premise of The Reappearance of Rachel Price just sounds really interesting. So when that book drops, you best believe I'm going to be reading it. So next is Crushing by Genevieve Novak, and I read another book by her last year. Oh my god, I can't remember the name of it, but it was good, and I liked that it was set in Australia and it was just following a girl going through struggles, and I mean, we're all just a girl going through struggles, so I just feel like that's going to be a nice, light, chill, relaxing read between all the thrillers and fantasy and stuff that I've also got in this list. So next is Never Lie by Frida McFadden, and I am a sucker for a thriller. I read so many thrillers last year and I want to keep that going. Like, thrillers are just page turners and I absolutely love them, and I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden last year. It was pretty good. It wasn't a top read for me, but it was definitely a good book, and I've heard good things about Never Lie, so I want to continue down the thriller path and read some more Frida McFadden. I think there's another one on this list somewhere towards the bottom. We'll get to it. Next is Lockout by John J. Nance, and many people probably haven't heard about this author. I don't really know how I found him, but his books are back from the 90s, and he is a air crash investigator and he writes aeroplane thrillers. And I read 2 of his books in 2023, Final Approach and Pandora's Clock, and honestly, Pandora's Clock was my #1 book of the year. I loved it, and Final Approach was fantastic too, so I just want to add another one of his books to my list, and Lockout sounded like the next coolest one that I wanted to add. So Lockout, John J. Nance. If you haven't heard of him, check him out. So next is another very popular one, but that is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Reed Jenkins. Again, heard lots of good things about it, and I really want to read it. I have read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Forever Interrupted. I believe they were both by Taylor Reed Jenkins, and again, I really enjoyed both of them. I went into the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo not expecting to enjoy it too much, because I wasn't like, oh, I'm not interested in stories from like the 50s or whenever her young life was based, but I loved it. And Daisy Jones and the Six is based in either the 60s or the 80s. I'm not actually too sure, but it sounds fantastic and I want to read it. So next is another series, but again, I'm only going to start with book 1 to see how I like it, which I know I will, but that is Harry Potter. I have never read Harry Potter, and I recently had a movie marathon with my boyfriend, and he has read all the Harry Potters, and he was saying about all the important bits they missed from the movies and how much better the books are, and he wants me to read them, and I want to read them too. So when I have some time, I mean, I've also got Throne of Glass on the frickin' list, but I do want to read Harry Potter. Classic. Next is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Again, another book that was huge last year and has been absolutely raved about, and I never thought twice about it until I read Fourth Wing, and then I thought, might like Powerless. So there's only one way to find out, and that is to read it. Next is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I have my iPad just over here with all the books written down. That's why I keep looking this way, but The 7-Year Slip. And Haley Pham made me want to read this one because she raved about it. And again, I think it's just a fun little romance. It'll be a light read between all of the thrillers and the fantasies, and I want to know what all the hype is about. So The 7-Year Slip. Next is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, and again, this one just sounded interesting, which is why all of these 24 books are on my to-read list in 2024, because they all sound interesting. But The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I believe, follows a woman who lives forever. So she lives like hundreds of years, and you go through the story of her having a family, and then that family dies and she continues to live, friends die, and she's all alone in this world for hundreds of years, and it just, you never guessed it, sounds interesting. So next is Beach Read by Emily Henry, and this is actually the book I'm gonna read once I finish Iron Flame, because I've already bought Beach Read on my Kindle, and I did start reading it on my way to Germany. And I didn't get very far in, only like a few chapters, but I wanted a light, easy read while I was stressed and traveling. And then I just never finished it. I think I ended up picking up a couple thrillers that just absolutely hooked me. And yeah, I want to get back to it. So Beach Read, I want to read, and I'm going to read it next, which I'm like 90% through Iron Flame, so I'm almost up to Beach Read. Next is I, Robot by Isaac Asimov, and my dad actually suggested this because he is a big sci-fi fan. He is always reading sci-fi books, and he thinks I would like this one. And this is the book that the movie with, what's his name? Will Smith, I think, was in, where the robots become sentient, and that's some scary shit with AI, but it sounds very interesting and I want to read it. Shocking. Next is another thriller, and that is The Last Word by Taylor Adams, and this one is about someone that leaves an author a bad review, and then the author comes after them, I believe, and that just sounds terrifying. And again, you can't really go wrong with a thriller most of the time. And then I read thrillers so quickly because they're just such page turners. Next, another series. Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. Again, this has fully been influenced by TIK-TOK. I want to say probably Rachel Catherine for that one. She's been raving about this series, and I mean, I want to know what all the hype is about, and now that I'm a fantasy Coralie, I might just like it. Next, again, I want to put this to Rachel Catherine with a recent video where she talked about some of her favorite books. Divine Rivals. I believe it's another fantasy, romance, romantasy kind of book, and again, I probably wouldn't have been that interested in it if I just read the back and moved on, but with all the hype around it, there must be something good about Divine Rivals, so I'm gonna find out what that is. Next is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and again, this is just another book that I've seen absolutely hyped, and this one sounds really interesting, how someone that isn't of status infiltrates the world of status. I mean, I don't really know how to explain these because I haven't read them, but it sounds good, so it's on the list. Next is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kazuguchi, and I actually have the physical copy of this book somewhere, but I've never read it, and I bought the physical copy of the book for a reason, because I thought it sounded really good and I wanted to read it, but I just haven't read it yet. And chances are, if I buy it on my Kindle, I will read it very quickly because I go to bed with this thing every night. I read it on my lunch break at work. I read it while I'm having breakfast in the morning. I'm always on this thing, so I might finally get Before the Coffee Gets Cold read, even though I've had it for like 1 to 2 years already. Next is The Collected Regrets of Cooba by Mickey Bremer, and I actually had one of my good friends rave about this book and how much she loved it, and that's enough for me. You loved it. Chances are I'm gonna love it. It doesn't always work that way, but this one sounds really interesting, so it's on my list. Next is The Only One Left by Riley Sega. And if I'm gonna be honest, I've written this on my list, like I was going through Goodreads and trying to find all these really cool books that I want to read, and I can't remember what this one was about, but I think it was a thriller, but it must have interested me enough to put it on my list, but I can't picture the cover right now. But I think it's a thriller. I could be so wrong. Back to another Frida McFadden, and I have added The Coworker to my list because, again, I was just going through Frida McFadden books and this one sounded really interesting to me, and yeah, I had to fill up 24 books, so we added The Coworker. 2 left. What are they gonna be? So the 23rd book on my list is Finley, Donovan is Killing It by Ellie Kozaman. My writing is really bad on my iPad. I use my iPencil. That's not what it's called, Apple Pencil. And my writing's terrible, but Finley Donovan is Killing It. I believe this is a story about a woman that writes crime fiction, and she's overheard talking about a book she's writing, and someone thinks she's a killer for hire and ends up hiring her, I think, and it just sounds funny. Like, I'm not actually too sure what the genre is, whether it's a thriller, whether it's a young adult, but either way, I think I will really enjoy this book. And the 24th book I want to read in 2024 is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, because the big discussion is Throne of Glass or ACOTAR, and I've looked through this and I think I'd prefer Throne of Glass by the sounds of things, but that doesn't mean I'm not also gonna enjoy ACOTAR, so I have put it on the list because I can read book number 1. If I don't like it, I don't have to continue. If I do like it, I have an entire series to enjoy, and that is just Chef's Kiss. That is amazing. There are so many books I want to read and not enough time in the day to read them all. I don't know if I will get through 24 books this year. I might get through 100 books this year. I really don't know. I've never read like this before, so I'm excited to find out. Although I have been reading Iron Flame like the entirety of January almost, because it's just so long. But I'm loving it. So those are the 24 books I want to read in 2024. Be sure to comment down below if you've read any of these, what you thought of them, and what some of your most anticipated reads of this year are. Chances are I will probably add it to my own TBR, like my to be read shelf on Goodreads. It's forever growing and I'm obsessed. I love it. But thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.